myself, I am extremely happy, honored, and delighted to have, my favorite writers here and teachers as the panelists today. And moderating today would be Ma'am Malati Mathur, and our panelists, our three panelists are Dr. Roopali Sircar Gaur, Professor Swati Pal, and Dr. Paramita Mukherjee Mallick. I will start with introducing Professor Malati Mathur. Malati ma'am was Professor of English, Director, School of Humanities, and Director, School of Foreign Languages, IGNOU, North Delhi. She has a PhD in Australian Literature, taught language and literature for over 3 decades, conducted workshops for teachers and students, and I think that I have once met her in the Australian Embassy, and it was a very wonderful moment. And she's a published poet and, goes without saying, and a creative writer, translates between Tamil, Hindi, and English with 3 Katha British Council Awards for translation. She has published widely on a variety of topics, including humor and travel. And, her publications are very many, but I'm going to skip that and quickly say that she also is a musician. She has a BA degree in sitar, and right now, she's joining us from Shimla, where she's a fellow, for the translation program, and she's translating Aghe's travelogue, Are Yayavar Rahega Yaad. So Malati Mathur will be moderating this session. It is my absolute pleasure and honor. I will also quickly introduce the other panelists. Dr. Roopali Sircar Gaur is also a retired professor. She's a poet, performer, writer, environmentalist, social justice activist. She has a PhD degree in English literature from the Jawaharlal Nehru University. And she was an associate professor of English in Delhi University. And then she went on to teach creative writing at IGNOU. She's also a widely published columnist, writer, features in several publications worldwide, and we have had the pleasure of having her as a guide and a mentor in several of our events, both on Fertile Brains, the platform that I am right now having the honor of organizing this event on. And I thank Fertile Brains, and I thank my dear, dear comrade, poet, brother, journal friend, K. Kumar Prasanna, for his sponsorship and his technical guidance, because without any of it, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. My technical know-how is very limited. And our last speaker, Dr. Paramita Mukherjee Mallick, is a scientist. I will also quickly introduce her. She's yet to join us, and she is having not a technical glitch, but just that her laptop decided to update right now. I will do a very, very short intro for her, like I've done for everybody. And she is a scientist. She says that I'm a scientist by profession and a poet by passion. I love that line. And I would also share that she's a toxicologist. Someday we will interview her and ask her at length what that means. It's very interesting in post-corona world. And she's really a globally loved and awarded poet, editor, literary curator. She organizes lots of readings in this Mumbai chapter of this event that she does. Her poems have been published in 41 languages, and she has 10 books to her credit. And she's also a songwriter. And I would like to share that one of her songs, Love Grows By and By, was recently sung by Anup Jalota. I think it was the first thing he did in English, and it was really, a hit. So I think that she's yet to join, but as we wait for her, I would request Malati ma'am to kindly please start the program.
Okay. Thank you, Pankhuri, and a very warm welcome to all our panelists this afternoon. Swati and Roopali, of course, we've known each other for quite a while, although the meetings have not been as frequent as would be desirable, I suppose. Pankhuri, of course, I think we met very briefly at the Australian High Commission, like you said, when I had organized an afternoon of poetry. Yeah. So we had both Indian and other poets who were part of that. That was, I think, that was pre-COVID. Now, earlier when we used to read our history books, it used to be BC and AD, and now we've started talking about pre and post-COVID times. So I suppose that is a sign of our times now. And it's an absolute pleasure to be a part of this discussion today. I think it's been quite a while coming to fruition, because Pankhuri spoke to me about it quite a few months ago. And I think just bringing us all together was an effort. And I'm glad that we could all coordinate our times and then be here together today. So I'd like to set the ball rolling with Swati, because Swati is very actively engaged in teaching even now. And Roopali, of course, has always been a teacher and a mentor. But to be able to actually go into the classroom and to talk and interact directly with the students, that's a very different experience altogether. So when we talk about this story that Pankhuri has centered this discussion around, the strange dream, and I found it a little mystifying. I was not very sure of what the ending is. Is it open-ended? Is it something that is also a part of a dream? Is it something that really happens? I was not really very sure of how to react to the ending, especially. So Swati, what would you like to say? What was your initial reaction when you read the story?
Right. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak first, though I would have preferred to have listened first to Roopali ji, because I think her insights and her passion for literature, for writing, is quite unparalleled. And especially I find that after she's left teaching, she's become extremely productive. So having said that, I had already written actually to Pankhuri that when I read the story, it kind of gave me goosebumps. It gave me goosebumps for precisely the reasons that you've said, Malati ji, when you said that, I was mystified and that I couldn't make out what the ending was, whether it was open-ended or not, whether it was a dream within a dream, whether any of it was real. So actually, for all of those reasons, as human beings, there's one thing that I want to kind of make a preliminary comment. One of the reasons why we are unfazed or unafraid of death is because it's an area of unknowing. We don't know it. So we don't really, we kind of block it out of our mind. So if there is something that happens in our lives, when we come face to face with death in a particular way, it is then that we get frightened. We get frightened because we suddenly are confronted by a situation where we thought we knew, but we realized we don't know. So Pankhuri's story was like that for me, where it kind of built a certain, I would be fearful. If I were to be in the protagonist's situation, my first feeling would be a feeling of fear, and fear of the unknown, fear of, there is a very famous T.S. Eliot line which says, between the idea and the reality falls the shadow. And I think Pankhuri's story was all about what is the idea and what is reality. So you're constantly shifting zones, and you don't know which of these zones is real and which is constructed. Which of it actually happened physically. And I mean, the whole thing, of course, to begin with, it's wonderful because first and foremost, it is a story. It is something that she has written. There is a tendency on the part of a reader, whenever you read this, I don't know, I can only speak for myself, of course. And when you read a story, especially the story is written in the first person narrative, one tends to identify it immediately with the writer, with the author, that, oh, this must have happened. And I fall into that every time. Every time I read a story in the first person narrative. So in fact, I wanted to ask Pankhuri, did this really happen to you? But I didn't dare do that because that would be invading her privacy. But I'm just saying that my first reaction was that it is such a, the language. I also want to comment on the language. The language was something that I found very easy, in the sense that I would find this a very easy story to share with my students because of the fact that, of course, it's wonderful because she's spoken about the singer and she's spoken about, the kind of society that we attribute, that singers belong to. So the drugs and the suicides and the murders and the very murky world that accompanies celebrities, especially celebrities in the ilk of Western music stars, So having said that, the language that Pankhuri has used is something that I know that my students would be able to catch very, very easily, and the context that she has placed the story in that of. So, this was my initial reaction, that it gave me goosebumps because suddenly I was confronted with a world of unknowingness.
Thank you, Swati. I think you put it all together so well, where you brought in the nuances of the story. You also brought in the language in which it has been narrated, and this intermingling of the perception of the author with the narrator, which, like you said, it is something pretty inevitable, I think, for most of us, because when we start reading a story that has been written in the first person, we tend to start identifying it with the author themselves. So that is something that we all experience, and of course you highlighted the fact that the setting of the story itself, the characters themselves, they are so contextually placed that we are able to immediately identify with them. We are able, it's not something very far-fetched. We don't start thinking, oh, maybe this could have happened. Maybe this might have happened about 100 years earlier or something. So that doesn't happen at all, because we immediately feel some kind of a connect to it, in the space and distance, the timeline of it, the spacing of it, the placing of this entire story and the characters is very readily identifiable, which is why I said, and I'm so glad that you said that you would be able to place it in front of your students and not really need to go into great explanations. You did mention T.S. Eliot. So, in that context, T.S. Eliot requires so much explanation.
Absolutely. Full of
right.
ideas. Yes.
All the time. I mean, I feel that I have to sit with about 20 books in front of me before I can start reading T.S. Eliot.
Very true.
So that doesn't happen here. And in so many ways, she has left it open to the reader to understand, to interpret, to make whatever kind of allusions they want from their own lives, from the lives around them, from the lives of celebrities around them. So in that sense, I think she has left it to the reader to, it is like she has given you a loaf of bread and said, you can make your own sandwiches.
Malati, if I may just add one last thing, and then I won't say any more. Because I'm a theater person and my passion, my research interest has always been theater. I'm not able to pursue it, but I'm just saying that when I read it, it was like a performance happening in front of me. I visualized it. I can easily write this into a script for a play, for a film. There was something so performative about the story.
How wonderful. I mean, because you are so interested in theater, you were able to spot that. And like, when I was reading it, I was able to actually visualize those characters moving around, and you were able to visualize it in a more theater format, I think, than what I would imagine. So thank you so much, Swati. And we'd like to move on to Roopali. Roopali, of course.
Just a minute. I think I did not do the introduction for Swati ma'am.
Okay.
I missed it. So I think
I
I'll
am
just,
nothing compared to Roopali ji, Malti ji.
Oh,
Not at
yes,
all,
but
Swati.
ma'am, yeah. I just quickly, for the benefit of everybody who's watching, I would like them to meet you. And my apologies for missing this. It's just, a lot of technical stuff was happening. So, Ma'am Swati Pal, Professor and Principal, Janki Devi Memorial College, University of Delhi, has been a Charles Wallace and John McGrath Theatre Studies Scholar. She's the author of several books on theatre, creative and academic writing. Her newspaper articles articulate her views on education. Her areas of research interest include performance studies and cultural history. She translates and writes poetry. Her poems appear collection of poems titled Absentia. She is a vice president of the Indian Association for Commonwealth Literature and Language Studies and has been the recipient of several awards. So thank you, ma'am, again. And these days you are also writing poetry in Hindi. I recently read one and it was very touching, very moving. Thank you again. And ma'am, over to you. Sorry about jumping in between. Thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
perfectly fine. And yes, people watching do need to know about Swati and what she has been doing. And like you said, she's recently started writing in Hindi as well. So that's wonderful, Swati. It's always nice to be able to dabble in different things and to sort of try to feel where we are coming from, and where we would like to go. So that's really nice to be able to sort of spread yourself around. So Roopali, who was doing a little bit of a jig when I got a glimpse of her on the screen, which is so typical of her personality. She is such an effervescent person. So Roopali, what did you make of this story, which is quite dark actually? And as a person, Roopali, who is not dark at all, what kind of a reaction did you immediately have when you read this?
Firstly, Swati has done a wonderful, presentation regarding the poem, and I saw Pankhuri was feeling very thrilled because it can be scripted into a short film. So I found that I think she didn't realize it herself that she had written such a dramatic script. But I have a problem with the title. I think that there's no need for the word strange dream, because it is strange anyway, right from the beginning. So I think we could knock that out and just have the dream. So just a little, suggestion. Um, if you ask me, firstly, one of the things that I always I notice is while and a dream is a very personal thing, it's a very isolating thing because you're not dreaming with somebody, that dream is alone, but it is a dream peopled with people. There are so many people in that dream. Even at the end, there's policemen and the dogs and, looking for the thing, even they come into it. So it's a very crowded dream, and the other thing that I noticed, which came out, was that there is some kind of a, deep sexual desire that is expressed when you see the protagonist and the icon, the cinema icon. The kind of eye contact they have, and the kind of, you can see it almost palpably, the sexual desire. So there is this thing very clearly that came out to me. There's a sensuality, and a sexuality which is there. So, and also, the appearance of the wife turning up and saying, he chose me. Now, chose me to kill me, or chose me to marry me, or chose me to love me. We don't know, she leaves it at that. And, moving from one, it is a blend, mystery. And I think you've also been very crafty. Her craft has been very crafty because Pankhuri knows, what is happening around her. Horror films seem to be very much in demand these days. Mystery, horror, and young people are watching it, older people are watching this film. So it's very dramatic. And there's a lot of anxiety also, kind of real life anxieties that come out, which she herself analyzes the dreams. And there are moments when she says that, oh, you know, I'm just a journalist, a music journalist, and I'm not so and so. So, you know, you keep coming back to some kind of reality, going back to this mysterious moments of dream. And I'm very fond of writing. You know, I find it so much easier to write about dreams because you can write anything. When you write about dreams, you can write anything because all kinds of things are happening and people don't know whether it's really happening. So there is this music and the celebrity, there is mystery and suspense, and there's a lot of emotional depth too. There is a, you know, with the musician, there is a love relationship. With the celebrity, I think there is a different sensuality and sexuality that I noticed. You know, some repressed desire of the protagonist comes out in that. It could be called as, you know, in some places, sometimes we say in literature, it's a slippage. You know, it could be the protagonist, it could be the author herself. You know, we don't know where we actually connect, you know. And then I found an ambiguity also. There's a lot of ambiguity there. The story leaves certain elements open to interpretation, which Malati you mentioned. You know, we don't know whether at the end what happens. You know, what is it? So there seems to be a kind of a sinister intuitiveness that the author, the protagonist has. So there is something sinister about the thing. The story is relative, but also what struck me was the imagery because she's a poet. Now we come to the author. I get out of the story to the author, who is a poet. And she's an excellent poet. And therefore, her prose is less prosaic and more poetic. You have wonderful imagery where something gets into bed with her. I mean, I wanted to note it down, but I'm busy cooking fish curry and stuff like that instead, you know, for my guests. So, so you have, the kind of metaphors and images that you have used. It's tremendous. And there's a lot of paradoxes also. And there's also personification, you know, something following you, something, you know, getting into bed with you, you know, and so on and so forth. I'll leave it to Paramita, who seems to have appeared to tell us more. So it's a compelling story, I would say. I noted down this, which weaves together elements of dreams, music, and mystery. It offers thought-provoking ideas and emotion, but it is unconventional in structure. Now, this ambiguity could be a positive thing, but it could also an appeal to people, but it could also be disturbing. You know, the reader may not be able to fully understand and say, "Pata nahi kya likha hai," but there are people who are much more sensitive reader would understand that there is an unconscious, the unconscious mind is there. Thank you so much, Pankhuri, firstly to ask me to comment on your story, which is, very kind of you. It's taking
Thank
a
you,
risk when you
Roopali.
ask people. No? You
Thank
take a
you,
big risk when you ask
Roopali.
us.
You brought in some very valid points, and I'm so glad you talked about the title, because that was something I had been thinking about as well. And I thought if no one else talks about it, then I will. And I'm so glad that you brought it up so early on during your comments, which is when you said that you don't have to say it's a strange dream. It's just the dream. Because what I felt was all dreams are strange, aren't they? Where, you know, in your dream, you are there and you are waiting for yourself. You know, you are a character in your dream and you're waiting for someone to appear, and that someone to appear is also you. So there are so many things that happen in a dream. And so I think dreams are usually mostly strange. So it's okay to just talk about it as a dream. And then you talk about the kind of undercurrents of sexuality that are so tangible in the story, where, you know, where she says they keep looking at each other and she feels as though she's just sort of, you know, relaxed all over. She's almost as though she's been mesmerized by the look in his eyes and the kind of the glances that they exchange. There is absolutely no doubt that there is that attraction there, which of course is not followed upon. So does that have any bearing upon the dreams that she has? Possibly, yes, but we really wouldn't know. And the third thing that you said again about the ending is that how it might appeal to some and it might not appeal to others. because for most of us, we like everything to be neatly tied up together, all the strands brought together, all the strings tied up, and it, to have a complete package. But to be just thrust into the unknown like this and say that this is the dream I had, you make what you will of it, that might be unsettling for some readers who might say, oh, what kind of a story is this? There is no conclusion to it. So that there is the danger of that as well. So I'm very happy to be able to welcome Paramita, who I hope has now got past her computer insisting on updating itself at a very crucial moment. And it's very interesting, Paramita, that you are a scientist by training, and but a poet by inclination. Yes. And so you bring in two very different sensibilities according to some, but I do not think that it is different at all, because one needs that kind of discipline and exactness and technical know-how that you need in science. You also need it in the arts. You need it for poetry, you need it for writing a novel, you need it for music, if you're a practicing musician. So you need that kind of discipline and exactness. So as a scientist, when we are talking about dreams, can you just tell me what your field of science is?
My field is genetic toxicology. So like you are saying, the exactness, the technicality, but I feel, imagination is there, both in science and poetry. Many because they ask me, like you are talking about science and literature, science and poetry. So they ask me, how is it you from science came into poetry? I always say, imagination is very important in both. And if you think out of the box thinking also, a poet thinks very, very differently from a common person. We see the same thing, but a poet will come up with something very different. And so does a scientist. If you see the latest Nobel Prize for medicine and physiology, they had come up with the mRNA making vaccines for COVID-19. So they could only think about it. It's like that. So very out of the box thinking and imagination, I feel.
Also, unless there was the leap of the imagination, we would not have landed man on the moon.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I think out of the box thinking and imagination, these two are so very common in poetry and science that I feel very, very good, and I feel very complete that I could come into poetry. I feel very complete.
It is some kind of an intersection, right?
Yes. Thank you so much for your kind words. And Pankhuri, I'm very, very sorry because of this delay. I'm very uncomfortable to talk over a phone, but this is the first time my computer, you can see, it's still lying out there blank. So it really, it was very mean on me today. I'm so sorry, Pankhuri.
Happens to all of us.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you were still able to connect with us, Paramita. And I'm not sure how much of the panelists you could listen to. Swati and Roopali spoke about the language.
I heard Roopali Di.
Swati spoke about the performative aspects of it.
Okay.
The way it has been structured, the way she has constructed the story. She says I can easily imagine it being, performed in a theater or, turned into a film, that sort of a thing. So she talked about that aspect of it. She talked about the language, how the simple language. She also talked about the context with which we can all identify, which is not something which is far removed from our world as it is today. And you listen to Roopali, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you think about the ending specifically?
The ending specifically, I quite liked it. She kept it as a cliffhanger, like she just kept it like a cliffhanger, and I liked it. The strangest dream, because the second dream was more strange than the first, and I really liked it. And I loved her language. Like, I loved her language. Sorry, I'm repeating what Swati had said already. I liked the imagery. Roopali Dee was saying, talking about imagery also. I liked the imagery and, her language. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name, ma'am.
I'm Malati. I'm Malati Mathur.
Yes, yeah. Malati ji. What I liked about Pankhuri's language is I personally like simple language. I personally like simple language, and it should reach your heart immediately. So I felt her language was very simple and it could easily be understood. And her imagery was very good. And she talks about Freud. And I too I was thinking, about these strange dreams of her. What would Freud, how would he analyze her dreams? So it was a very new kind of thing with dreams, and as if I could place myself in that situation. Like she has explained it so well. Her expressions are so good that I could place myself in her situation. Like I could visualize what is happening. So I felt like the story was quite interesting and very, very clear and very understandable, and the readers can visualize what she's trying to say.
Thank you, Paramita. Let me get back to Swati for a little bit. Yes. Swati, there is this woman who says, the wife, he chose me. So, is that a figment of her imagination because she feels guilty about being attracted to this man for having a crush on him, possibly? Is there this hint of the supernatural? Is she part of the dream? What do you make of that? Those brief appearances, but which are still very powerful.
Yes. So I think all of that, I think this is the protagonist, the I in the story is a sexually, I think Roopali spoke about it so beautifully. And in fact, that particular paragraph, which was a very powerful paragraph where you spoke about the, in fact, I'll read it, if you don't mind. I
connection,
really liked it a
right?
lot. Yeah, I'll just read that. Hang on. It's me. I am rooted to my spot. Flower buds are shooting out of my body, fixating me to the ground, or maybe even pulling me underground while forcefully lunging upwards. All I want to say with the certainty of earth is that just because I showed up for this program a day earlier, in other words, got the date wrong, doesn't mean the charges I'm making against them of stalking are compromised. So whatever, it goes on like that. The fact is that this is a woman who's sexually, I don't know what word I'm looking for. Perhaps I'm looking for the word unrealized. Maybe her sexual aspirations are unrealized.
Yeah, that's a much better word than repressed.
Right. So, and that there is a kind of potential aspiration that she has for somebody. So a sentence like he chose me, for me, if I were to look at it from a very psychological Freudian point of view, I would see that as, it's a statement of contest. It's a contestation. It is really a contestation for me. If somebody says the word choose, when you choose somebody, the implication is somebody else was not chosen.
Yes.
So if I am chosen, so and so was not chosen.
Rejected, yes.
So somewhere there is this whole thing about, I feel, in her mind, though she doesn't realize it, there is a contest between her and the wife. I would have one reading of it could be this. The other reading could be that, when somebody says that he chose me, and then now, like I said, all of this could be fiction. God only knows whether this wife is actually dead or not. I mean, we don't know. It could be just a dream. Maybe even that could be a dream. So somewhere it could be that the protagonist has killed her off. That, okay, you said that he chose you, but now look, he's also Mephistophelian, and he's also killed you. So, I may not be his choice, but I'm still safe. So, there's a whole lot of conjecturing that I like the story primarily for this, that it leaves, Paramita spoke about imagination. It is such food for imagination. It could run riot, really. Your imagination could run riot. There could be so many interpretations to the things that, to this very simple and yet so complicated story that Pankhuri has written. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you, Swati. Paramita, one thing that I just wanted to ask you as a reader who is not discussing the story at all, purely as a reader, what do you think that this is a dream? Do you think this really happened? Do you think this was autobiographical? What was your feeling after finishing the story? Were you confused?
Malati ji, I always believe that whatever we write, there is some part of us which talks about ourselves, our journey. So everything, like when I write, when any of my friends, any of my poet friends, there is some part of us in that, whether you're consciously putting it, whether you're unconsciously putting it. So unconsciously, of course, a part of Pankhuri was there. So I cannot just write it down that it's autobiographical. Some part of her, some subconscious part of her was there in the writing. So what I feel, because when I write, I feel sometimes some subconscious thoughts do come out on paper. So I felt that.
What did you think about the ending?
The ending was a cliffhanger. Like I wanted to read more. I wanted to read more. I wanted to read more. Like I wanted to somewhere I thought, oh, Pankhuri, why didn't you write more? Something of that sort. Yeah.
No. So did you want a neat resolution to the entire thing?
As a reader, yeah, and I'm a very positive person who always wants a very good resolution, positive ending, So I'm always searching for a positive ending. Maybe I know I am a little biased towards positivity. Maybe I was searching for an ending.
Okay.
Yeah.
Roopali, there was this very interesting element that you talked about, the sexuality, which is not very obvious. It's rather subtle, actually. And but then that is an entirely different character, right? You have the protagonist having a crush on this man who she dreams is going to be murdered. And then she has this interaction with somebody else who she is very strongly attracted to, and it seems to be mutual. So is there some kind of a conflict there?
This is a very adult story.
Yeah.
I don't think I would want kids to read it. there is something very adult about it.
No, but it's also very subtle.
Complex.
There's
It's
nothing.
subtle,
It's not in your face.
Yeah, it's not in our face, but for me, it's in my face. It's really there. It just jumps at me. So what I would say is that, see, when we write, as Paramita says, there is the author in it, but sometimes the author begins with an idea, but a lot of people just slip into your story. I'm very fascinated with the whole process of writing, where we begin with an idea, but it goes beyond that, and there are all kinds of characters. I was writing for the first time a novel about 3 women, and then I don't know, I've not had a lesbian experience, but I was able to write very graphically about it, at some point, and I myself was taken aback. I myself was taken aback that I was capable of writing something like that. So then what I noticed here is that there is a sense of guilt also, social guilt, because there is a constant reference to the wife. So you're the other woman, you're the other woman. And then there is this, the wife keeps popping up, and then the
Yes.
word married man, she herself says that, am I doing something incorrect by, having a, crush on a married man? And then
Yes.
the celebrities also had changed women, like, clothes, he's taking off their clothes, married women and other women and so on. So there is a kind of a societal guilt. And you will please pardon me if I tell you that at the end, when we all had dreams. And there are sometimes the dream is very suffocating, and that thing about that pillow being, some sort of thing being pushed on her face. Those dreams are very suffocating and you think it's very real. And then when you get out of it, you feel so relieved that it wasn't real. We're right in the center of it. And I think that television thing, which is, it's devastating. So many people have died and so many things are happening. But to the protagonist, it is like an orgasmic relief. I'm sorry I'm using this term, but it's like an orgasmic relief because it was building up to that. It was building up to some kind of, the whole thing has a sexual thing throughout. And there's a crush, there's a relationship, there's this sitting in a party. We have met men like that at parties. It's not that we haven't, and then at the end, I think it's a relief. So now that relief is like an orgasmic relief. At the end of it, thank God it's only it was a dream. Thank God it was a dream. And something real has happened, but it doesn't have the impact it would happen if you were watching it normally. It's a relief, and that itself has a kind of a trauma also, and a form of very self-centered cruelty also, that people's deaths compared to what happened. So, and maybe all of us who studied literature, that in the 17th century the word dying had relationship with sexuality.
Yes, completely.
Yeah.
For me, what I found interesting about this story was the going back and forth. Also there is this mistaking of days and dates on the part of the protagonist. So it's all rather blurred. The distinction between reality and dream, between days and dates. So it all seems to be rather surreal to me. And there were times when I thought, is she talking about something that's really happening? Is she talking about something that's happening in a dream? Is she going to wake up from this and say, no, it was a dream? Or is she going to now go home and then get into a dream? So there was that kind of a miasmic, kind of a blurring of boundaries, which I think was pretty successful in such a short story. When you build up that kind of an atmosphere, and like Roopali, you just said, and then there is that kind of release at the end. So it's sort of the way it builds up and then it sort of explodes. So I think that was something that Pankhuri has done very well within the span of a short story. So I think now we should let Pankhuri speak for herself. She has been listening to us blathering on for so long. And I am reminded, I don't know if this is a true anecdote or not, but when I was studying and we were reading T.S. Eliot in the classroom, one of our teachers said that, the beauty of literature and poetry is that everybody is free to interpret for themselves as long as the text supports you. And then he says, I believe that T.S. Eliot was once walking down the corridor of a university, and he heard a teacher explaining one of his poems to a class full of students. And so he listened, he stood at the door and he just listened. And at the end of it all, he went in and he talked to the teacher and very sincerely said, thank you so much for bringing out all this in my poem. I had no idea that there was so much in it. I didn't know that I had written this, So Pankhuri, I think, must be feeling that sort of a thing right now, saying, what are these people talking about? This is not what I wrote about. So Pankhuri, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much to every one of you. I am just so overwhelmed. First of all, thank you for taking out so much time and for reading my story so closely and talking about it, with such passion. And really, I'm very honored. It's an overwhelming moment. I just want to say a couple things. Well, she wakes up with that dream, or rather she wakes up from that dream in the very beginning, where she says that, what a strange dream or something. Maybe she doesn't say that. She just wakes up and she says that I just dreamt that my favorite singer had died. And what a terrible world I have woken into. And there is a line somewhere in the story that says that this is not Elvis Presley age. Like, people were so crazy about him, and each of them probably, had a crush on him and stuff like that. But today we have so many icons, so many singers, so many actors, so many football players, and so on and so forth. And each of us idolize. I mean, people have posters in their rooms and so on and so forth. But she wakes up from this dream and she says, oh my goodness. And she starts writing down what I would say, it's kind of like a diary thing. But instead of saying, dear diary, she says, you're asking me what to make of this dream, because I don't know. I mean, I simply don't know. Why would I want to kill my own sort of protagonist, right? I mean, this is a singer that I would like to listen day in and day out. And, and she is like living in this sort of idolization, which you could call a crush. She has called it a crush in the story. And she lives in that world. She's a music journalist. She says, and she introduces herself. She says, I'm a music journalist and this is what I do. And she doesn't talk about her personal life. She's a single woman, as we know from the way she talks about herself, her work. She's free to have a crush on whoever she wishes to. And she is totally, if not enjoying it, maybe, I don't think I brought out the tone or the feeling of enjoyment at all. What I brought out is that suffocation that each one of you talked about. And yet, in some ways, this is the realization of her, some sort of a career dream. I don't know. I mean, she's working as a music journalist, yet she misses that big event that she has to personally attend. This singer, the one that she fantasizes or idolizes, she has never met personally, or is not going to meet so closely, as she meets this band of singers whose CD release she goes to cover, and has this intimate sort of that moment of light flowing around and wine flowing around and music flowing around and flowers growing out of her body and so on and so forth. And she feels like she's just, and what I wanted to portray was the way, not the way she is being seduced, but the way in which he is seducing.
Yeah.
As in, that was what I wanted to really show between the two-person interaction. I mean, if there is a single woman, it's totally possible to get lost in that world of light and glamour and start fantasizing these very good-looking men who basically might not even be that good-looking, or who might not even be, they come to us in a packaged form and we are just crazy about them, So she meets this person and is like that, and yet she's mature enough to realize that something is not right. She knows that, and then she talks about the second dream. I mean, going back to, there are basically two dream sequences. One is the one that she wakes up from, where she says that, oh my God, I just dreamt about the cardiac arrest death of my favorite singer, and why would that happen? And the point of the story writer is that what a world we live in, basically. Like Swati ma'am had said in the very beginning, that it's the fear. it's this atmosphere of brand selling, of things being made to look good when they are not, and it's this loneliness of people and their addiction to these gadgets and things that are being live streamed, or things that are being packaged and streamed to them, sold to them from people they have no interaction with, from people that they don't know, and we are idolizing somebody who's so far away and dreaming about them. And now, but their world is also full of these murky, charges and murky doings and things. And there is a dead wife. There's all kinds of things. And this could be, I love Hollywood. And I just want to talk a little bit about the writing process of this. I love Hollywood. And I don't know if this is Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, sort of a trial, but there are many other actors, who I like to watch, and they have been, pulled into this. And actually, I was in Canada earlier doing my PhD, and I was indefinitely on a visa awaiting status. Like I said, that I've been through an immigration trial, and I first immigrated to United States. And before that, my world of music was simply made up of Hindustani classical and Bollywood and that sort of stuff, even though I loved Hollywood even then. But when I started driving and the radio started playing in my car, I got introduced to another world, and I started listening to Whitney Houston. And when I was myself dealing with race, I was majorly listening to Whitney Houston. And when she died, so mysteriously, I think she died in her bathtub, like many other people. And I started reading about the music world, and I really found that it was so full of struggles. We hear about the art world, that it is really, full of such.
I think Pankhuri's connection has got interrupted, possibly.
Yes. I think it's hung. Seems to have hung.
Yeah. But basically what we had all been talking about, how the autobiographical elements do creep in willy-nilly, is that's exactly what she was talking about, right? How her own experiences and what she was listening to, the kind of music she was listening to, how all of that gets woven into this tapestry that you weave.
I was just recalling what Paramita said about the fact that she wanted a positive ending. I think all of us really yearn for that. We all yearn for the positive ending. But, I was also thinking about E.M. Forster in aspects of the novel, where he says that a good story is one that makes you ask what next. And so I think in that sense, Pankhuri's story really is a good story, because you want to know what next,
Because that's exactly what Paramita said. She said, I wanted to know what next. Why didn't you write something more?
Yes.
No, but then also, Swati, I am reminded of what has always been said, that, it should have a good beginning, a good middle, and a good end.
Yes.
Right. So I think it's all to do with, it's all rather subjective.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Pankhuri is back with us. Yes, Pankhuri, we lost you for a while.
I'm sorry. And I think I was just going on and on. But
No,
I was just saying that, so this music journalist, what she's trying to say is that she's having a love affair with her work and has become sort of very, may I use the word licentious or whatever? She lets herself be seduced, but she's aware of the threats that surround all of these seductions. And she's aware of some sort of a threat or some sort of a danger that's lurking somewhere in the air, because of which she's having these dreams. And there are basically, the dreams are two, and the third one is a dream, but it's like a hallucination sort of a thing that she has after that party where she's also had wine and she's been really physically seduced. And But she gets up to this news, the ending, what we say is the terror attack on the stadium where actually the singer was to perform. And I just also want to share one more bit of the writing process aspect of it. Before I just want to say a little more about the storyline. And that is that, like I said, in Calgary, when I was living there, and basically I was on a single entry study permit, and I was doing a PhD in history, specializing in British imperialism. And I got out of the university in 2012, leaving my PhD unfinished because, the day my study permit visa was renewed, the graduate administrator, the secretary of the department, she said, are you ready for the exam? And later I did write to the Prime Minister of Canada that, nobody should have to do a work that they are supposed to do on a particular status, like on a study permit, without it. It's really not fair. So Stephen Harper actually wrote me back. This is before Trudeau came into power. Wrote me back saying that, fine, I will agree with you. So gone is your PhD. You can either join and get a study permit again and start this process, or you can just stay in Canada and look for work for 2 more years. I'll give you 2 more years. And I did take those 2 more years. And that's when I wrote my 2 poetry collections about race and gender and so on and so forth. But in 2014, in April 2014, when I was out of the university and when I was sort of just, staying in different places in the city, and I used to visit a particular place where they also had a fitness program and so on and so forth. So, with bare minimum social interactions, there was this piece of news. There was this event that had happened. I mean, there was this event, and that event was like, I hate to call it an event. I mean, there was this massacre. It wasn't a massacre, but it's still today it is the worst mass killing in Calgary. Calgary is not as bad as states with school shootings, but. Yeah, so there was a house party in Brentwood. When I was just looking this up 2 days ago, it just on Wikipedia, it just said that there was a house party. That was it. But I know from memory, and I know for sure, because I read the local newspapers then, that this was a CD release. And the CD release was being done by a group of Jewish students. And there was this another student, a friend, who later pleaded insanity of some kind, who just went there and stabbed them to death. This is a real thing. So I sort of wanted to borrow that event of CD thing and turn it into something else. And my effort was to just talk about the troubled times. And that is why the climax is, in the way it is, that there is a terror attack, and people who are waiting for this big singer to come, they are all gone almost. And he's, of course, yet to arrive. But that is the ending. But to go back now, just to, very briefly talk about the storyline, I think it's just that she just wakes up from this dream that my favorite singer had died, and the irony of it is in the ending that no, the rest of the world is going to die, but no, I mean, people who make it to the top. So basically, this is maybe about the hierarchies that we live in also, and how unsafe it can get for somebody who's a single woman, and she ends up having this hallucination that she's actually being choked with a pillow. And then she wakes up and there has been this terror attack. So the dream is the one that she wakes up from, but then there is the weirder, and that is why it is called the strange dream, because it has a sequel about her favorite singer, that his dead wife actually comes in. Yes, that is a dead wife coming. She is actually dead. So apart from the two events that have been talked of as dream, the rest is the reality. And that is why when this thing in Israel happened, I just, we had been talking about doing this discussion since a while, but when this Israeli thing happened, I just think that this is really I hate to use the word a very good time, but this is really, the time sort of to discuss it. Yeah. So I think that's about it. It's just simply a single music journalist who sort of claims to be having this, love affair with her work, but then it also sometimes transcends boundaries. And, although she doesn't in this particular story have any actual affairs, I mean, everything is in her head and some of it is realized, that way. But it's just about the insecurities of our times. I would just like to say that.
Thank you, Pankhuri. And like you say, none of it is realized and it's all in her head. It's no crime to be attracted to someone, right? And it's usually not something that you have any control over. You don't choose who you are attracted to or not. So that is, but then how you choose, what you choose to do about it is the crux of the whole thing. And here, I think she's just too drunk to do anything about it. I think she just feels good about it, and she feels like I had mentioned earlier. She feels mesmerized, and then she just gets up and leaves, and then comes back to that dark dream again. Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone. Paramita, Swati, Roopali, and of course Pankhuri for speaking so eloquently about the process of writing the story and the kind of things that she was experiencing that went into the story itself. So that was very insightful, because a lot of times we write something, but we really don't know why we did it, or what is it that went into it, what came before it that made us put pen to paper and which brought out the things that it finally did. So I think you have a lot of insight into your own creative process, which is a very good thing, because you're able to speak about it in a very reflexive kind of a manner. So thank you all very much. And thank you, Pankhuri, for making me a part of this and for letting me moderate the whole discussion. Thank you so much, and a very good evening to all of you. Thank you.
And thank you, Malati. You've done a great job,
Yes,
Thank you so much.
yes,
It's fascinating the way you can do it. Yes.
Yes,
And thank you,
Thank you,
Pankhuri.
Malati. It was wonderful, really wonderful.
And
Thank
thank you
you.
for bringing these amazing things about my story, because I couldn't have. So what I said was just, how I made the dough, and, that is all.
Yes.
But I'm so honored, and this is such a great moment. So thank you to everyone again. Thank you.